So what are the cultural forces that are shaping our attitudes about gender, power, and masculinity? And how are they contributing to this epidemic of gender violence? Why is the question often, why does she stay? Or why did she go back? And not, why did he hit her? What role can you play so that you are part of the solution, so that you can become a bystander no more?
What was the moment in which you realized violence was not a woman's issue, violence was in fact your issue?
Men are really impacted by domestic violence in ways that are almost unimaginable, and you just have to, at a certain point, come to terms with it.
What was the worst insult I heard as a little boy? It was you could throw like a girl or you could run like a girl. This was when I was a young little boy, and I would challenge any man in here to think about how young you heard this sexist and misogynistic and homophobic language that taught you that women and girls were less than. And that put you inside this very narrow understanding of masculinity.
It became clear to us that while the overwhelming majority of violence against women is men's violence, no doubt about it, the overwhelming majority of men are not violent, but we're silent about the violence that other men perpetrate, and that's as much of the problem as the violence is. They only can do it because we allow them to.
What's the biggest barrier to changing it in a way that no man anywhere in the world can say or excuse any violent behavior?
Patriarchy, because it has driven our laws, it has driven our commerce, it has driven our economy, it's comfortable. And so it's not just that men want to identify with that narrow form of masculinity, but women as well. Because there's economic comfort in it, there's family comfort in it, there's so many places where you just don't want to rock that boat.
Our masculinity is policed by other guys. So you ask yourselves, why don't they come forward? The answer is because what you get, and this is the one thing I heard when I was doing the work for Guyland, on every single campus, the #1 phrase among young men is 3 simple words. It's the compensation, it's what they get for putting up with all this policing and abuse. And those 3 words are bros before hoes.
How big a problem is it in your minds, collectively, individually, the media? How big a problem is it?
It's a problem.
Yeah.
We wake up in the morning and turn on the television and we're exposed to all these hyper-violent images of men of all racial backgrounds, right? Mm-hmm. And so there are very few spaces where we as boys and men, and of course girls and women too, can go without seeing these really sort of over-the-top, exaggerated examples of what real manhood looks like. Once you begin to show guys how this hyper-masculine persona does not benefit you in the long run in terms of your health and wellness, then you start to get guys to think, okay, wait a minute. I'm checking out. I'm divesting in this whole patriarchy thing.
The biggest barrier that I found when I tried to do work on bystanders specifically with guys on college campuses is what I call the individual opt-out option, which is I never did this, therefore this has nothing to do with me. Right. That sets the bar awfully low for being a good guy. You know, like, all right, didn't rape anybody, check, great guy.
4 out of 6 boys are learning everything they know about sex and about women from pornography.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do we fight this?
This is terrifying.
Yeah.
The issue of pornography, when we look at the socialization of men and how we pass that socialization down to our boys, and all of us, whether we're those men who are violent and those men who are not, have been socialized from this construct of manhood. Not that all of us act out on those things, but that's the teaching, that women have less value, women are property, and women are objects. And with commercial sexual exploitation and pornography, that's really where those 3 things meet at once.
These all are about how do I get engaged.
I don't want to understate the level of fear that men have in addressing each other and confronting another man's sexism or abusive behavior. We have to inject, we have to stick needles into their bodies and like inject courage into men and say, you can do this, you can do it. And I don't want to make fun of the fear, because in many cases the fear is real. Yeah. There can be some really serious ramifications for speaking up and confronting other men. However, we have to be more aware, and we have to teach men that there are a plethora of options that they can choose from in order to challenge it.
I have a feeling that this room is mostly the choir. And what you now need to become are preachers, every single one of you. Leave the choir, go out of the church, and start your own parish, and start changing the way everybody that you know thinks about this issue. Because our survival, I believe, literally depends on it. So thank you.